2020 can undoubtedly be called the year of the digital medium. While other mediums were dealt with a heavy blow, digital emerged as the biggest beneficiary in the COVID year. But can it really sustain the momentum? Now, we have with us Mr. Ajit Verghese, Chief Commercial Officer, ShareChat, to talk about the headwinds and tailwinds that the digital juggernaut must navigate to stay on course.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Ajit Verghese, Chief Commercial Officer of ShareChat. I think very interesting sessions preceding me with especially the chat between Vikram and Uday, and a very thought-provoking session from Apurva is something that I was found very interesting. I think first of all, I would love to thank Sam, Vikram, Nawal, and eForum for giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts on how to navigate the digital journey from here on. Just to give, before I come back to my main topic of discussion, I would love to give you just a background of the whole behavioral change that we have gone through. Look at the advances in technology in the last 1 decade, especially with the recent emergence of machine learning, artificial intelligence, AR, VR, Internet of Things, wearables, blockchains, payment gateways. We can go on and on this, right? But I think what we have seen is a rapid change in human behavior. I think, and if you now couple that with the change impact of COVID in the last 12 months, we can also see a big attitudinal shift. Now, whether it's the shift towards quality, safety, privacy, social, trust, or even the general outlook and purpose of human life, right? I think there is a drastic change in attitude. Normally, attitudinal changes happen over a period of 3, 5, or even a decade. I think what we have seen over the last 12 months is something that has navigated the entire journey in a period of 12 months. I think overall, we all understand that with this behavioral and attitudinal change, we are probably in the midst of a big disruption. We are all aware of that disruption, right? But I think the key question that comes to my mind is that are we agile enough to adapt to that pace of that evolution? I think that's the real question that is coming to my mind especially looking at the consumer and the marketing space. Moving on to the next slide. Keeping this with the background, I would love to introduce the topic of discussions on what are the key headwinds in the digital ecosystem. I think if you look at all the noise around digital ecosystem in the recent times, now whether it is the data dialogue, whether it is the regulations, whether it's the discussion about monopolies, the frauds, etc. All this discussion has one core theme that is central, and that to me is the discussion of consumer privacy. I think that has become extremely critical and will probably be critical in the years to come, in the next 2-3 years. I think I would love to discuss this as the biggest headwind on today's session. I think the world of advertising, marketing, or content personalization, or the delivery, the way we have known it in the last 1 decade, or we have learned over the last 1 decade, is probably going to change. We all know the cookie is definitely crumbling. Now, the question is, how do we manage that? How do we navigate that? What should we be prepared for? I think the first thing that comes to my mind when I say cookie is crumbling is this whole dialogue about personalization, which came about in the last 5 or 7 years. I think that probably goes out of the window, and that is really concerning me. I think serving advertising based on any kind of demographics or user behaviors is almost impossible without identifiers, right? I mean, yes, there is Apple Safari browser which is talking about privacy and privacy to the consumers and permission based advertising. So that ecosystem, since it's a closed ecosystem, that may still continue. But look at what Google has introduced, something called Flock, right? I think it is only based on browsers. So basically what it means is contextual audience selection becomes the only option, or it could be probably be based on on-site content. And that to me takes the personalization debate out of the window, and that is concerning. Now let's start breaking up the digital ecosystems into multiple fields, right? When we look at SEO, for example. Now SEO, I think identifiers play a slightly lesser impact because it operates on page content strategies. Now that and it has indirect role because It depends on the content the publisher wants to develop. But however, start looking at SEM. Now, all marketing campaigns rely optimization reliance on attributing a consumer action to a marketing event. Now, whether you call it purchase, whether you call it visit or app install, SEM would be definitely become tough if you are without identifiers and unique IDs of consumers. I think that's a real concern, and nobody is yet talking about it. We are all talking about what happens in a normal banner or a video advertising, but one of the largest spends that happen is search engine marketing. On the next point of social, let's look at social, right? If you look at social media promotions, again, activities can continue with the loss of identifiers, but let's start thinking about how would optimization happen if the result that we want to achieve is based on outcome, like whether it's purchase, repeat visits, gameplay, or even a sign up. That becomes extremely tough in the social world. uh, Without identifiers, publishers can't offer custom audiences, frequency capping, or other forms of optimization a campaign for effectiveness, right? A lack of attribution would mean there is only one source which is going to get paid for driving traffic or conversions, whereas the consumer is actually going through multiple touch points or multiple sites to complete an action. Now, that is definitely a loss of revenue for, if you look at the affiliate industry, right? I mean, we are not talking about the entire journey. We are talking about only an attributable event to the last mile. If a revenue cannot be attributed to a publisher who is providing the lead, or where the consumer is moving from one journey to the other, I think that's a big concern. If there is a loss of identifier, any loss of identifier along the chain breaks the entire attribution and subsequent any affiliate revenue that comes with it. I think that to me opens up a larger discussion on how is the consumer getting converted into the last mile. uh, let's look at fraud, for example. Now, how does fraud happen? Fraud happens mostly by mimicking on-site behavior or even the site itself, and therefore we don't know whether it's an actual person or it's a dummy behavior. Now, if you don't have unique identifiers, if you don't have the consumer IDs available, then how would you stop it? Now, I understand that big players in this publishing houses or big players that are already established over the last decade definitely have invested more. They have a better control on their users. They have mapped their journeys and have storage data for a long time. Will be fine. But what about the open web? What about the upcoming players? I think that is a real concern about that whole publishing ecosystem, where how does this whole consumer journey and the revenue gets earmarked for all the players. If I look at content now, while content again, identifiers may not be directly involved in the process of content management. However, when we start looking at delivery of personalized content, which is managed through a content management platform, that is again going to be directly in line. I mean, as I said, personalization is the key that is getting lost without identifiers. Now, without identifiers, if you to distinguish a unique visitor to the page, without that, publishers cannot sort out the demographic of their audiences or what appeals to some users, while some users may be ignoring. But every time a user is going to a site, if there is no identifier, it's actually a fresh instance of a consumer. You have no track record whether the user had come before, what are the likes, dislikes. So publisher will have limited options for audience analytics and what offers the kind of details needed to optimize the development of their content offerings, right? If you look at the programmatic world, now the ability in the programmatic world is clearly uh, trying to figure out the anonymously identify the individual user is the building block, right? The building block of any programmatic world is the user identity. As buyers and tech partners use these unique identifiers to create the audience segments, whether you do frequency capping or any other transaction mapping across segments, and make sure that your campaign is effective or your campaign can be measured in a reasonable way. Now, principal participants in this media transaction have continuously used third-party cookies and should be considered to realize that the audience benefits in a programmatic channel. So a third-party cookie is actually the linchpin for a non-vertically integrated publisher, that is obviously the open web, to realize that this is the value created by the programmatic channel. I think that's essentially, again, a huge miss. I know there are a lot of dialogue which is going on a unifier ID, something like what Trade Desk is developing, or something that the others like LiveRamp and is developing based on deterministic modeling, and that should solve a bit of the problem that we are facing in the programmatic world, because we can have unique IDs possible in unifying IDs across the industry, but that only solves some part of the problem, not the critical mass of the problem. If I look at e-commerce, for example, now identifiers and audience recognition are absolutely necessary to maintain a cohesive shopping experience. Imagine you going into an e-commerce site, and each time you go, if there is no history of browsing or the selection of certain items and placing it in a shopping cart, or completing a purchase, or managing the whole shopping experience seamlessly each time a consumer is visiting, and the checkout process. Imagine what happens if it's every time you go into an e-com sites, it's a new journey. Now, there hasn't been good clarity in the industry today. E-com players are a bit silent on how this journey is going to go through. They are not talking about cookies or non-cookies. They are probably in better control of their own customer today, and that's why probably there is a bit of silence there. But I think this is, again, if there is a regulation, if there is an industry standard about not having cookies, then definitely it's going to impact the e-com experience. So while these are some of the headwinds that we are seeing in a cookieless world, whether it's going to come in this year or whether it is going to come in the impact is going to be seen in the next year, I think there are a lot of questions regarding how will it evolve, whether the industry or even the regulators or government would allow different browsers to have different set of standards, or different platforms maintaining their own set of standards and own experiences. What happens to cross-channel evaluation? What happens to frequency mapping? How does advertisers move into saying that is it going to be silo platform led planning, or how do I make sure that I'm in control of my customer, and I have a way to attribute, and I have a way to measure effectiveness of my campaigns across my customers. I think that's a big headwind. Discussions are still on, according to me, but the challenge is yet to be seen in full scale as we go into the future. My next point is the next headwind is actually a bit of opportunity and a challenge. I think we all know about the digital ubiquity, right? I think 10 years back or 15 years back, we all had physical way of working across physical experiences, retail or movies, or any of our experiences as a consumer or a human is about physical. And we always start, the digital was an alternative. Like, we can also watch some videos, we can also have a experience outside the physical world. But now with this whole COVID acceleration, I think we have now seen there is a virtual and digital world which can satisfy most of your needs, but there is also a physical alternative. I think now, not that I'm proposing either. There is always a coexistence of both the worlds, but I think this opportunity has given a great opportunity for the larger ecosystem, but also given a huge headache for a lot of the transition of the business. I think if you look at the business or the consumer, it's no longer restricted by any geography. It has created a unique situation where consumer is at the driver's seat. Brands are going to the small and medium brands are finding themselves competing with the large global brands, which is a good opportunity. But that opportunity has got challenges in both sides, right? Big established brands who had established models of working, supply chains, managing cost of being like fast, cheap, and good will be extremely tough. And both the speed and the investment becomes a challenge. Now, for the larger economy of small brands and the SMBs, and now have a great arena of competition. However, it's a completely different model. It's a completely different speed, and investment on the fingertips is absolutely necessary for them to scale up and compete with the global brands. Now, what is critical here is disruption is given. Investment in alternate models is a must, and a lot of thinking is going on how it can not be dependent on physical infrastructure. So to me, these are the two big headwinds that we have. One is on the consumer privacy space, and one is on the digital ubiquity, both giving an opportunity and a big challenge on how businesses will evolve, how supply chains will evolve, how established business models will be changed, and new alternate ways of working is going to come. With that, I think one of the so I also thought, yes, there are lots of challenges, there are lots of problems. I think in any of the mediums that you look at, there is always going to be a challenge, there is always going to be an opportunity. And I think we as professionals, whether it's marketers, advertisers, publishers, our job is to constantly evolve. And I constantly evolve at the pace of that evolution. I think whenever I personally have gone through this across the last 25 years of my work, and have seen transformations across every 5 years, I have always believed that go back to basics. The philosophy of advertising, the philosophy of marketing over 100 years has not changed much, but yet it gets modernized. It gets new technology comes in, and we all keep improving our ecosystem using the new methods of technology, right? So inherently, I think my suggestions or my recommendations on tailwinds of digital economy would be in that space of consumer content and commerce. But what we would probably look at is what are the modern ways of achieving the same end. I think the first and foremost suggestion is for all the advertiser, whether you're an advertiser, whether you're a publisher, or whether you're in the marketing agency business. I think first and foremost that we have all been taught across the so many years is know your customer. I think never has it been more significant for advertisers or publishers to really invest in their customer and maintain their customer profiles, right? Now in the last 5-7 years, we all have seen the emergence of DMPs. Now DMPs are more in the advertising space about managing the advertising money. But I think what has come across now is CDPs, customer data platforms. I think it's an absolute must for whichever ecosystem you believe in. Knowing your customer is absolutely creating that identity, keeping that identity with you, getting more descriptive customer profiles, getting to record their behaviors and patterns, or any other qualitative data. And CDPs help you store it make it usable for a marketing activation. And not only that, it actually helps you not just use this for advertising, but it can actually break silos across the organization, and everybody in the organization can start knowing their customers and using it to the best possible way. So I think one of the big things that advertisers or publishers or agencies should look for is, how do I become an expert in the customer knowledge, and how do I use that customer knowledge in everything that I do? I think smart and focused advertisers have definitely started investing in this, and we have seen a lot of CDP adoption in the top clients. But the key question that actually comes to my mind is, how about the larger ecosystem? Now, what about the large number of clients in the mid segment, the MSMEs? How prepared are they for investing in this technology and storage and learning mechanisms? How do they build? How do they maintain? Do they have the technical know-how? Are there enough advisors in the market to suggest what is to be done? How do you operationalize it? I think that's pretty critical challenge that we face, but that is a good challenge than a bad challenge according to me. Having said that, if we have great CDPs, customer data platform, I think we should also start looking at how do you invest in good martech tools or third-party tools to help in marketing activation and analyzing performance. So even if there are less cookies in the market, or even if there is less, it's a cookie-less world, knowing our customer and maintaining the database and doing marketing activation in that space will help us get a better return on money. Ability to track and ability to measure it will be much greater. Obviously, we spoke about privacy, and therefore it's always important as you go into the future to invest in a consent management platform, so that we can maintain the privacy of the customer, our customer, so that wherever we do marketing activation, we are in complete control of the privacy issues that the consumer wants. Remember one thing. customer continues to need more and more personalized and rich experiences. So consumer is completely in want of those. However, they do not want to sacrifice their privacy anymore, and to anybody and everybody, because each time they give some privacy or their data or somebody something, how does it get passed on between various platforms, ecosystem, apps is increasingly becoming a concern. But it's not about the rich experiences. They still need personalized and rich experiences as they consume media. The second point that I wanted to suggest as a tailwind is a suggestion to all in the ecosystem, is probably chase the customer, not the platform. Now, me being coming from a platform, it is probably a bit of irony that I'm saying this, but I genuinely feel good platforms will flourish when marketers, advertisers follow the customer, and then make an effort to make sure that it is working for them, the platform is working for them, because that's long term, because the advertisers will keep coming back rather than just testing and going away. I think if you look at all the dialogues about data privacy, wall gardens, etc., I think the big players will still benefit. I mean, if you look at customer privacy and regulations, etc., the big players will still benefit. I mean, the reason I'm saying that is because big players are more equipped to strengthen their ecosystem, bargain better with their open web players, has deeper layers and layers of consumer understanding which the new players will not have, and they already have a large customer base available with them. So having said that, big platforms will continue to strengthen. That's fine, but marketers need to follow the customer. The reason I'm saying marketers should follow a customer is because as you start looking at optimizing it across multiple platforms, it's not about only doing a JBP with a big walled garden. It's about looking at the larger ecosystem, making sure that there are private and trusted marketplaces you can test, so bring back more efficiencies in your advertising budget and in your consumer interactions. Make the big players more accountable, more responsible for your advertising effectiveness by talking to them about more data-led partnerships with larger set of publishers. Because when you open out this larger ecosystem, I think it will force the big players to start talking about data sharing, data effectiveness, because that's absolutely critical for you, because you know your customer and you will probably know how is it working better and better as we go along. I have spent long years in the industry, in the agency side, and being a purist, I would say a more cookieless world is world like a unifier ID by Trade Desk or other matchmaking or deterministic unified IDs are actually a good solution for the open web. But thinking about the kind of spends we are doing in the big players, almost I would say that I've come to this side and I've realized 60 to 70% of the spends are still on big players. So while the unified ID solution is great for the 20 and 30%, that's not enough to tackle the larger problem that we are facing. So I think I would encourage, keep chasing the customer, force the big players to start becoming more accountable through data partnerships, and make sure that we use unifier IDs and customer IDs in a very effective way, which makes everybody start collaborating together to make sure that the customer is the king. The third point that I wanted to actually bring about is actually a bit is more art and creativity, right? I think I'm just going to park my thoughts on this whole data and scientific logic that I was creating so far, but I just think I would want to test the boundary on what has happened to the brand building and creativity world. I think the whole marketing ecosystem, the marketing agency ecosystem was built on this whole the whole angle of brand building and creativity. I just feel, where has it gone? I think if I were to relate myself or anybody in this listening to this topic, I think most normal people will find advertising annoying and intrusive, right? That's given, right? If any of us would have is watching a video on the internet or anywhere else, an ad comes right in the middle, it destroys the experience. I think we know it. Unless it catches our attention, it gives you a delight. It's a kind of new experience that I would love to look forward. Otherwise, if there is a skip button, If there is a skip now, how many of you would actually not press the skip now? 99.9% would press the skip button if there is an option like that. Now look at the irony. Now there is not only a skip button. Some big publishers are also started putting a second video or an ad uh, on a skippable format. Now one was not enough. Now you're making the consumer suffer with a second video. I think no wonder there are lots and lots and lots of ad blockers being installed. Last I heard about 600 million across the world, yeah, and people are installing this so that they can avoid ads completely. Now, even look at the recent trend of OTT. I think a lot of installs, a lot of consumers are moving into the OTT space. It's also because of the clutter of advertising that you see on TV and now digital. I think people are now saying it's not only about rich content in OTT. I think rich content evolves as we go along in every 5 years or every 3 years, right? It's probably because it's an ad-free haven, and I think ad-free havens probably is making them have a richer experience of the platform and the content that is coming there. I think so. I think people will do everything to keep ads at bay, and that is going to continue rapidly as we go if you don't adapt to the new ways of creativity and brand building. The question that comes to my mind when I say this is actually, then why would actually marketers continue to hang on to the traditional models or traditional methods of advertising? Now, isn't marketing all about customer delight? Isn't it about being sensitive to what the platform, how the platform consumption is happening, and isn't it about the format and making it a seamless experience rather than being trying to be intrusive, over the top? Open a lot of sites when you open up in mobile, hundreds of ads pop up, banners, clickbaits, and would this mean anything for a consumer, publisher, or anybody, except that maybe they will come once and they will not never come back again. I would suggest is that for the marketing agencies or the marketers, I think one of the key things is to ask the question about, go back and ask the question about, why do we need marketing versus this whole mad rush about performance marketing. I'm not saying performance marketing is bad. I think it's about the balance between brand building and performance marketing, which is absolutely critical. Just remember, lesser and lesser brand differentiation in the marketplace, the more you're moving towards commodities, the less. And there's only one benefit when there is less differentiation and more commodity. It's the benefit is the e-com players, and I think, just think about it, why it's beneficial, and I leave it at that. My fourth point on the tailwind is actually about artificial intelligence. I just feel maybe in a presentation, or an article, if you don't talk about artificial intelligence, it may not be as good. So I'm also going to talk about artificial intelligence a bit. Having said that, what I actually wanted to look at artificial intelligence in a slightly different way. I think, let me give you the context. I think when we start looking at last one decade, I think I'm also guilty in that, because I've been in that space, right? Most marketers or agencies are talking the same lingo that the publishers wanted us to talk, right? 10 years back, we were selling 1 second reach, 2 second reach. Then came in the syndicated content in the garb of user generated content. Now they are called PGC. Then it started saying that, even if you skip in 1 second or 2 second, it's a view. Now there is a industry standardization saying that if it's a 6 second view, it's fine, it's working for me, even if the ad is going to get skipped in 6 seconds. It's amazing. How do you compare that it's worked, right? But that's publisher wanted you to believe that, right? Then came in the last 3 4 5 years or 6 years, it came that click to purchase, I think, or marketplaces, which shifted the entire focus of ours from brand building to actually move into saying purchase performance, install, purchase visits, which is again a good. But it has now come to an extent where, in my new job, when I'm meeting more and more advertisers, more and more people in the ecosystem, it's come to an extent where the dialogue is, I'm doing brand building on television, and I'm only doing performance in digital. Yes, sometimes I throw in a bit of video there because it gives me TV plus plus philosophy. So it has come to that extent where we believe brand building is digital and TV is more. Sorry, brand building is more TV and digital is about performance. So my recommendation is dial the publisher speaker down and start looking at how we move ahead in terms of effectiveness, in terms of learning our consumer better, getting more deeper insights by digging more into data. My recommendation is invest in artificial intelligence, a lot more artificial intelligence led tools, or the practices, to have a very very deep understanding or a better view of emerging trends in consumer taste, consumer patterns, and tailoring comms and tailoring content in a way that is preferred by the consumers in the platform that they're interacting. I believe targeted, contextual, or mass marketing is going to continue. So we are not going to see that it is going to move one this direction or that direction. I think all of these will have importance in marketing world. It's the question is, how do we learn more about our consumers? I think in the old world it was about analytics, and now in the new world, if you have to dig into deep data, if you have to dig into more into the entire digital ecosystems to look at patterns, scenario planning, or getting into future predictions, or what you call as intuitive mind of what consumers is going to do, I think AI can deeply help in this to get more deep insights, what is happening at a hyper contextual or a level, and we can start personalizing experiences in a language that consumers would prefer. That's to me in the marketing world, AI is extremely important. My last point is actually on commerce. I think social commerce is a new field which is emerging, and I've seen this over the last 1 2 3 years, that how with the advent of social apps and the short video space, this whole ecosystem of peer-to-peer micro influencers, celebrities, macro influencers, all their roles have kind of changed drastically. Probably it was already there, but it has come to the fore today. I mean, it's making everybody, all of us, a creator. We look into how-to videos, we look into reviews, we look into recommenders than just advertising. Which now that is a positive sign. It's encouraging a lot of brands to actually reach out to consumers directly, interact with them, and even transact with them directly. And that to me is the power of social commerce, and that's emerging. That's going to continue for the next 2 to 5 years. I strongly believe that, and probably that's one of the reasons why I have shifted into that, more into the social and commerce space. And especially now start looking at it in the background of COVID, right? With this whole journey of COVID in the last 1 years, this advent of digital currency, payment, the fast tracking of payment gateways, the fintech developments has increasingly made it easy for everybody to access it, and scaling up is not a problem. Reaching out to the larger ecosystem of India is not a problem anymore. So my question is really, are brands really ready to get up close and personal with their consumers, leverage some authentic content, and start looking at organic influencers to drive advocacy in a continuous and a seamless way? And with that, I would love to end my topic today with just few parting thoughts. I think one of the key questions that still comes to my mind as we discussed all the tailwinds is that, are we adapting to the kind of conversations consumers are doing in each of these platforms, the kind of engagement the consumers have with specific platforms, now whether it is within digital platforms or whether it is like Apurva mentioned about across platforms? How are they engaging, how are they interacting with that platform? How is the purchase intent getting developed across these platforms? Or are we just going to say, oh, I have made a 30 second, or a click to purchase banner, help me run it across the platforms. Now that's the kind of adaptability and agility that I would recommend going forward. Now that I wear a publisher hat and a marketer hat, I think it's extremely important how we do this communication with our consumers in a format, in a way that they like, rather than just a uniform way of working. uh, Thank you so much, E4M. Thank you, Madison, for this forum, and quite appropriate discussion point at this time. I know there are no questions in this forum, but if there are any questions from the listeners, put it in the comment box, and the team would help you get back in a format that you would like. Thank you so much.